Good morning, rock stars, and welcome to Free Motion Quilting Bandcamp. My name is Holly Ann Knight of String and Story, and it is my job to guide you to quilt with confidence. Thank you so much for your patience. I was having a little bit of a connectivity issue getting started. If you are familiar with my videos, you'll be like, Holly Ann, that's a new background. Where are you? I'm in our new classroom space, and I think this is my first time going live from this space. So I'm very excited. I'm also a little bit nervous because of the internet issues, but we are just going to cross our fingers and toes that all goes well. Sound good? All right. If you are here with me live, do please say hi. In the chat, I want to greet you. I see Christy in Canada, Erica from Kansas City, Cynthia from South San Fran, Barbara in Ohio, Elle Feinberg in Canton. That's amazing. Lori in Atlanta, Jane in the UK. Oh, hello. Cynthia from Northeast Wisconsin. I am thrilled to have y'all here. I am going to jump right in because we have a lot of ground to cover. Susan Ruff, good morning, my dear. I'm so glad to see you here. And Ellen, Corinne, Sherry, fabulous Michelle, Carol, keep them coming. Leslie from Arizona, Jane in Maine. That was a nice little rhyme. Thank you for giving that to me. I really appreciated it. All right. Keep them coming. I'll keep shouting you out. I'm just going to go ahead and dive us on in because we are here for Quilting Rockstar Free Motion Quilting Bandcamp. And if you are here, I feel relatively safe assuming that you would like to finish your own quilts with confidence and you are looking for some tips, tricks, and guidance about how to do just that. And I happen to agree with you that it is time to start your journey to free motion quilting confidence and becoming a free motion quilting rock star. Does that sound good? I think it sounds fabulous, personally. Nancy is here in Indiana, Samantha in Virginia, Marcia, Wilma in South Africa. That means we have at least 4 countries in the house, folks. That is amazing. Jennifer in Michigan, Gina in New Jersey. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So today I have the pleasure of helping you kick off your free motion quilting journey, and it is my mission to help more quilters just like you finish their own quilts skillfully and joyfully. And I think that's a really important pairing, right? Because sometimes developing new skills can feel scary and overwhelming. And we're going to talk about that a lot today. And how do we overcome that feeling of anxiety? Quilt as desired has been a set of dirty words for far too many quilters for far too long. And I'm on a mission to change that, to make those really exciting words instead. So finishing your own quilts is a creative and rewarding practice. And when it feels hard, I just want to remind you from the top of our hour together today that I and the other quilting rockstars have your back, and you are going to quilt amazing things. All right. Good morning, Joe, Mary, and Sandy. Fabulous to see y'all. Now, if you are brand new around here, let me introduce myself. As I mentioned, my name is Holly Ann Knight. I have been teaching free motion quilting and other forms of finishing your quilts, including ruler quilting, online since 2017, and I have watched thousands of quilters just like y'all grow in their confidence to free motion quilt through my blog, workshops, and digital courses. Here on the screen, you can see our retail space. That is String and Story on Main. It is about 200 feet that way from me, so just down the street, down at the end of this building. And here is my lovely family. So when I am not hanging out at String and Story on Main or hanging out on the internet with y'all, I'm hanging out with Hubster. He's the cutie in the bottom left. His actual name is John, but you know, Hubster's cuter. And our 2 little boys, Jim and Ian. I say little, they're growing up really fast. We are in 2nd and 3rd grade this year, and I don't quite know how we got there. We also have our doggo, Havana, who is sitting down beside me. She literally started wagging her tail when I said her name. You're very pretty. And you're very good. Yes, you are. Good girl. And we have 2 cats, Moby and Felicia, and a big old aquarium. So there's a lot going on in my life and in my house, and I am so excited to share a little bit of it with y'all and get to share in a little bit of your journey. It is hot in Atlanta-ish. I agree. I am dressed. You can't see my whole outfit, but you can get the idea from the top. I have on green trousers today. I am fully participating in fake fall, even though fake fall will only last for about 4 more minutes. And then I'm going to regret everything that's on my body. But, you know, it is what it is. This is what we do this time of year in Georgia, because we see our friends in Maine who are like, oh, it's nice and crisp this morning. Let me get out a quilt. Yeah, it's not crisp here. You know, it just is what it is. All right. Enough of me being silly. I will do my best to focus. But A bit of housekeeping. You have made an intentional effort to be here today. Time is our most precious resource, and I am so thankful that y'all have chosen to spend some of yours with me. And I want to make it as worth your time as possible to be here, especially for those of you who have made the effort to be here live. That's incredible. Give yourself a pat on the back. All right. That's investment right there. I want you to get comfy, either settle into an armchair, maybe with a quilt if it is cooler where you are. Maybe go get yourself an iced coffee if it is hot where you are, like it is here. Maybe get out some chain piecing. Just settle in and enjoy the next hour. And over the course of the next hour, ask all the questions. One of the things I bump into a lot with my rock stars in training is that there's this lingering sense of anxiety around asking questions. As kids, anyone who has a child in their life or has at any point knows that kids do not have any problem asking questions. They ask far more questions than our grown up brains are really prepared to deal with in the course of a day, right? I don't know about y'all. It is not uncommon for me by about 6 o'clock in the evening to look at my kids and go, I love y'all so much. I'm going to need a break from the questions. My brain cannot, right? But as grown-ups, we develop this sense of concern of what if this is a silly question, right? There are no silly questions here. Even if everyone else watching this video knows the answer to the question you ask. If you don't know the answer, I want to answer it for you. That's what I'm here for. That's my job. So please, at any point as we are going along, questions about free motion quilting, when we get towards the end of our time together, questions about Free Motion Quilting Academy, please drop them in the chat. I will answer them when I come to a natural pausing point. I want you to leave feeling really equipped and empowered that you can do this quilting thing. All right. You are in the right place if you desperately want to finish your own quilts, but you feel stuck about how to begin. You are in the right place if you have tried free motion quilting in the past, but either never made it far past meandering or just felt like the whole thing was a loss and really just didn't go the way that you really hoped it had. And yet you still would love to figure out how to do it. You're also in the right place if you've been hearing about Free Motion Quilting Academy this week and you've got some questions and you want to know if it's the right fit for you. We're going to talk about that at the end of our hour together. And I would love to answer those questions for you. All right. So the bottom line is that you will be a quilting rock star. And let's start with setting a rock star sized dream out in front of us. Now, I know that just about every single one of us has that one quilt, that one project that we dream of being able to finish ourselves. Or we have that one free motion quilting motif that we're like, man, if I could just quilt pebbles, if I could just quilt feathers, if I could just do a really nice ribbon candy, right? We all have kind of that one thing that we're like, if I could just do this, I would feel like a success at free motion quilting. If I could just finish this one quilt top, if I could just finish this other project, right? I would love it if you will share in the chat with me, what is that dream for you? When I say if you could wave a magic wand and free motion quilt anything, yes, that was my swish and flick. You're welcome. What would it be? I want to know. So drop that in the chat for me. For me, I'm always kind of looking ahead at different projects. And I've been free motion quilting for a lot of years now. If you follow me on Instagram over at String and Story, I put a reel up very late last night of one of my very early free motion quilting videos. And it was a feather tutorial that I filmed at our old house back in 2018, 5 years ago, almost to the day. And it's amazing what has happened in the 5 years that have passed, right? And the way that my skills have grown, the quilts I've quilted, time and practice makes progress, man. And that adds up. But there's always still a new goal, right? So for me right now, I am finally have the end in sight on my 100 days, 100 blocks quilt. And for a long time, I had this kind of big quilting outside the lines plan that I wanted to do on it. But the more I look at it, the more I really would like to custom quilt each individual block in a way that I've never done a quilt before, with the way that I want to mix free motion quilting and ruler work. So that's my dream right now. Let's see, what are y'all's dreams? Let's see. Margaret says feathers. Garnet says feathers and pebbles. Lori says free motion quilting on my domestic. First attempt was not successful. I just went back to straight lines. Oh, Lori, we can fix that. Diane says, I struggle to get even stitches. Mel says, I would love to be able to just sit at a long arm and paint with my needle and just play. Oh, it's the best feeling. It really, that is a dream worth pursuing. Michelle says, I have a huge quilt for my hubby that's just waiting for a quilting plan. Lynn says, I just want to get started. Mary says, which designs are the best to replicate and look like they are somewhat similar? Designs that can look good. Lori says, ruler work didn't work either. Oh, Lori, don't you worry. Keep those dreams coming, Rockstar. Drop them in the chat. Already, I can tell you, every single one of these dreams is achievable and worth pursuing. Elle Feinberg says, having my pebbles and feathers look like pebbles and feathers. Yes. Yes. I just said, always learning, right? You want a quilty confession out of me? Just, we'll just break the ice with a quilty confession. I have had my handy quilter Moxie for 2.5 years. And it drives differently than my Tin Lizzie 18 did. It just moves differently. It's just a different, every long arm's a little different in how it works and the feel of it as you drive it. And I had spent a lot of time on my Tin Lizzie 18 really finessing my tiny motifs, right? Little pebbles, little paisleys, detail work, right? When I got my Moxie, the big picture skills translated. But because of the little difference in how it drives, that finesse has never been quite the same. And so I was doing a set of riff quilting on a quilt this week. And so just mushing a bunch of designs together. And I was making myself do pebbles and feathers because I wanted to practice having my pebbles and feathers look like pebbles and feathers in a way that they just haven't on this particular machine. So I totally sympathize with that goal. Corinne says, I've been too scared to even try, so I'd love to have the confidence to go for it. Oh, we're going to take care of that in like T minus 45 minutes, Corinne. We got this. Lori says, spoiled by learning to quilt on a long arm and domestic. Yeah, that's a challenging switch, but little bits of practice will add up fast, Lori. All right, so I repeat, every single one of these dreams is worth pursuing and it is extremely achievable. And you can and will be a free motion quilting rock star. You're in exactly the right place to start that journey. Now, as I said that, if you had a little voice in your head that went, boop, yeah, right, we call that your inner mean grump. And we're going to talk about your inner mean grump towards the end of our time together. But just know, short version for right now, ask that voice to take a coffee break for the next 45 minutes because we have some free motion quilting learning to do. All right. So today we are going to tackle 3 important skills. The first is going to be how to quilt pain-free. All right. Very often folks try free motion quilting for the first time and then their neck is very sore, their arms are very sore, their back is very sore, and they go, that hurt. I don't want to do it again. All right. We're going to talk about how to prevent that. We're going to talk about how to have invisible starts and stops. So what do you do when you get started if you don't want to backstitch and have visible extra thread at the beginning of where you started stitching? What do you do if you run out of bobbin in the middle of the quilt? How do we handle those thread tails and what do we do with them? And then finally, we're going to talk about how to think like a rock star. The hardest part of learning how to free motion quilt is what happens between your ears. Okay. Somewhere along the way, as grown-ups, we forgot how to be new at things. We forgot how to not immediately be good at something that we are curious about. And we're going to have to relearn some practicing techniques and kind of toughen up our mental game to deal with that inner mean grump. And we're going to talk about some steps for that today. Then finally, I'm going to invite you at the end of our time together, if you enjoy the next 45 minutes and you leave with something useful to help you on your free motion quilting journey, I would like you to consider the invitation of Free Motion Quilting Academy at the end of our time together. All right. But we'll get there in a little bit. All right. Mel says, I'm learning to send the IMG out for a long walk. Listen, those of you from the UK, the English do this best. A long walk will cure most things. Maybe that's true for our IMG as well. All right. Let's start with pain-free quilting. Ergonomic posture and a proper quilting setup are vital to a pain-free quilting experience. Using our body as it was meant to be used and moved and knowing how to work with it instead of against it, especially when learning a new motor skill, absolutely key. All right. There are 3 keys to healthy posture. And in fact, I'm going to scoot my laptop back and I'm going to tilt this forward. Let's see. I'm going to put me up. Hold on. Don't get ahead of yourself, Holly-Ann. I'm going to read my slide. Then I'm going to pull the slide down and show you what I mean by this. Okay. So the first thing that I want you to think about is your table height. Okay. A lot of us put our machines on a dining room table or similar. Those tables are high because if there's a lot of space between your table and the chin, you are more likely to spill the soup as you're eating, right? So those tables tend to be a little bit higher to reduce mess when we're eating, all right? The downside to that is in order to have good control over our quilt, we need to be able to work with right angles at our elbows, hips, and knees and be up over our work so we can use large muscle groups, okay? And if we're sitting down below our machine, so if I'm as I am now, I know you can't see this as clearly as you'll be able to in a moment, right? But as I am now, I have my chair lowered down at my sewing desk, right? This is about where a dining room table would hit me, okay? This is mid-rib, right? This is, at or just below my bra line for those of you who are bra wearers. And or heart rate monitor if you're not, right? So about where that heart rate monitor would hit. But notice my arms are already a little chicken wingy, right? And if I'm quilting, I'm going to be kind of scrunched up on myself, right? So how do we compensate for that? We're going to talk about that in just a second. From there, we want to make sure we have a nice stacked body, right? So we want to be sitting up over our hips. We have a tendency to slouch back in our chairs and sit on our tailbones. I want you up over your sit bones. If you've ever had a kid jump on your lap and you're like, oh, you have a bony butt. Literally, those bones are for sitting. So be up over those bones and stack your shoulders on top of your hips, okay? Nice tall torso, head over your shoulders. It's going to help you engage your core. And then finally, in order to help us hold this posture, we want to think a lot about light. As we age, from the age to 30 to 55 or so, our need for light increases by 10 to 20%. So having a really good light to increase your visibility is going to make a big difference. All right. Let me pull this slide down. I'm going to show you a little bit of what I think, and then I'll show you on a picture as well. All right. So here is my quilting surface. This is the phone that is running our internet, so we want to take good care of it. And if I were to just scoot up to the equivalent of my dining room table and a dining room chair, my quilting surface is way up here, right? Notice where my arms are at. Right? In ballet, we call this chicken wings. Ballerinas are supposed to hold their arms here. If you relax your elbows, you have a chicken wing, right? And, just for memory's sake, that will stick. You're never going to be able to unsee that visual now, right? So if I'm quilting like this, I'm going to have a lot of tension down my forearms and down through my hands, okay? You can literally sit at the table and practice this feeling, and you will notice it immediately, okay? I also feel it a little bit right in this little muscle group right above my elbow. It's easy for me to slouch when I'm here, okay? Instead, I want to be up over my work. Now, I happen to be in a lovely arrow sewing chair that goes nice and high. So this is an easy adjustment for me. You may need to get creative at home. But you want to be up over your work. Notice now my quilting surface is at the bottom of my rib cage. I am up over what I'm doing. I have this lovely right angle at my elbow. My torso is stacked, okay? See how I'm up over my hips? I'm not back here. I'm up over my hips and I've put my shoulders on top of them and my head is up. All right, so now when I go to quilt, I'm gonna feel it a lot more up in my bicep, my tricep, my delts, right? We're gonna use big muscle groups to slide that quilt around, right? And I'm gonna engage my core. So if I don't engage my core, I'm sitting here, right? And I'm back to having a lot of little muscles doing the work. Sitting up and engaging those core muscles, again, these are stronger muscles of our body. They're less prone to injury and irritation and inflammation, right? These little muscles down through our arms and especially in our hands, if you have any joint issues, that's more likely to cause a problem and increase the chances of pain while quilting, right? So these muscles are less prone to injury. They're stronger, so they're going to fatigue more slowly, all right? And they're muscles that we use in other areas of our life, so they're hopefully a little bit more developed, right? That being said, big asterisk, quilting's really physical. So when you're a new quilter, I recommend quilting in 15 to 20-minute sections and then taking a break, okay? Because your muscles are gonna have to get used to this, all right? So when we're here, then that final piece, of course, is light. And I'm gonna just slide my daylight right over here. So I drop it below my eye level so that it's not, shining into my eyes. I have really bad astigmatism. If that's happening, I'm gonna be unable to see. So I want, the light bar itself down below shining down at my work so I can look under it and clearly see what I'm doing. Okay. To give you a little bit of context, here's what that looks like without the light. And there's what it looks like with the light. So it's going to really increase my visibility and make it easier to see those stitches. Okay. Put it back over there. Um, Susan says, I keep my foam roller and yoga blocks in my sewing room for stretch breaks. I love that. Yoga blocks can double for another really useful purpose. There's actually two that you could use yoga blocks for. One is if you have a tendency to go back in your chair, you can put a yoga block behind your back and it's going to help encourage you to sit up, right? It brings the back of the chair forward. Also, if when you raise your seat up, your feet are not quite reaching the ground, you could put a yoga block under your foot pedal. You could put a yoga block under your other foot, right? And because yoga blocks tend to have a little bit of texture to them, they may be less likely to slide around than something like a cardboard box. So you can literally use them just like in yoga to raise the floor to your body so that you're not having to stretch your feet, etc. So, Susan, I'm thrilled that you brought that up. Thank you so much. All right, I'm going to lower my seat back down so that I'm in the frame. So thinking about our table height or chair height and our body position relative to our quilting surface, our stacked body to make sure we're using those larger muscles, and then of course our light as well to reduce eye strain. If we're having to squint or strain our eyes, we are more likely to thrust our neck out or hunch our shoulders. And as you can imagine, that hurts over time. Here is a still picture of what this difference can look like. Okay, this is on one of my former machines, my Juki J150, fabulous machine. On the right is what I tend to see as a natural quilting posture for a lot of folks. Notice the outstretched neck, notice the curved spine. I'm sitting on my tailbone. In addition to not being able to activate my core when I'm sitting back on my tailbone, you're also reducing circulation to your legs. And it can lead to things like leg numbness and whatnot. And we all know that that's dangerous, right? We do not need quilting to be dangerous. All right. Sitting up is going to allow us to use those larger muscle groups and to have better circulation throughout our limbs. Okay. Why am I so passionate about this? Well, obviously, I don't want y'all hurting when you're quilting. That's really important. The last thing that I need is any of y'all getting hurt as you're doing this. But this is also very personal. When I first started long arming, both of my long arms have had handles that are kind of up here as opposed to any that are lower, right? So always kind of having my arms up like this when I'm quilting. And on my first long arm, I hadn't learned about posture, right? And I was having some of this with quilting on my domestic as well. It hit kind of a critical mass point with my long arming. And it was when I was doing the whole journey of trying to do more small and detailed quilting. And I really wanted to be able to see what I was doing. I didn't have a light on the long arm. I hadn't, learned about posture. I was doing a lot of quilting at night because my kids were little and that's when I had time, right? And I quilt driving the long arm with one hand and the other hand on the quilt itself because it gives me that biofeedback to know where I am. But to see better, I was like this. So I now have my arm up by my head. Notice the shoulder positioning, right? It's like ratcheted up and forward, right? And I'm craning my neck. And I was having so much I just was constantly like, "Oh my gosh, I'm in pain, I'm in pain, I'm in pain." And had not made this connection other than, well, I've been long arming a lot, now I'm hurting, but I guess I just need to build up that muscle. So, then being me, I'm like, I'll power through it so the muscle gets stronger. Terrible plan. I go to the chiropractor and I'm like, I'm suffering. Like, can you please check on my shoulder and see what's going on? Uh, a new chiropractor had just taken over at the practice that I go to. And so he and I didn't know each other real well yet. I am convinced that this conversation is one of the reasons that we have become such good friends because it was such a funny conversation. But he's checking my shoulder and he's like, "Oh yeah, you definitely oh, Lori said for all tasks." Oh, hang on, is this? Oh, we haven't gotten there. Don't you worry. You haven't missed it. Um, he said, "This is such an odd question, but I'm trying to figure out what's causing this issue with your shoulder." And I was like, "Yes, please, like ask away." And he goes, "Do you play rugby?" And after I quit laughing, I looked at him and I was like, "What do you think?" For context, I'm 5'6", and at the time of this conversation weighed like maybe 130 pounds. I have a tiny frame. I am not a large human. Like I just, you know, it is what it is. And I was like, I would get destroyed playing rugby. Like, look at me. Like they could just look at me and I would break in half. Like, this is not. And he goes, I just can't figure out what would be causing this, because he was like, I've only seen this injury because I was basically developing a rotator cuff issue that was pulling on my shoulder blade, that was then out of alignment, that was pulling on this rib and connected to my neck. It was a whole thing, right? He was like, I've only seen this with football players, rugby players, and sometimes baseball players. I was like, fascinating. He goes, what do you do for a living? I said, I'm a quilter. And then I had to explain that to him, obviously. And he began to ask me questions about what I was doing, and we figured it out, right? It was the long arming. And then Dr. Mario began to teach me about posture, and it has changed everything. And every time I teach on it, it changes it for the students as well, because y'all don't want to be quilting with pain either, and I want to protect you from injury. So, all of this to say, this can be a nice conversation where you're like, oh yeah, posture matters. But I want to give you that little warning of, it really does matter. I don't want you to end up injured. Okay. So, last review on this. Use the largest muscle group possible for all tasks, right? When we are quilting, we want flat hands. So we're using muscles in our arms and our backs to move the quilt, not grasping with our fingers, right? We want to be sitting up and letting our core stabilize us, not the little muscles in our upper back, right? Or our hip flexors or any other little muscles we might end up trying to flex in order to be stable. I also want you to stretch and hydrate frequently. So Susan already brought this up of keeping her foam roller and yoga blocks handy. Take those breaks every 15 to 20 minutes. I was about to be like, drink some water. This is coffee, but drink some water. Treat this somewhere along the lines like a yoga or Pilates workout, right? Think of it as, a light yoga session for your body that over time, that movement compounds and makes a big difference. That means that over time, you're going to get stronger and be able to quilt for longer periods of time without pain or fatigue. But it also means that in the short term, you want to take breaks more often than not. Set a timer for 15, 20 minutes, quilt, get up, take the dog for a walk, go to the bathroom, get some water, have a little snicky snack, something to get you up and moving, and then come right back to it. All right. Good to know we can take on rugby, right? I mean, who knew that apparently we're developing, rugby shoulders just by doing quilting? That's probably a stretch of logic, but you gotta admit it's funny. So stretch and hydrate frequently. That's what you were looking for, Lori. All right, next up, invisible starts and stops. So we've done something practical about our quilting setup. Let's talk about some. If you've ever seen a quilt with what appear to be invisible starts and stops, and what I mean by that is you can look at a quilt like this and you're like, well, the thread is there, but where the heck did they start? Right? Then this quilter has buried their thread tails. Burying thread tails means to run the thread into the batting of the quilt in order to secure the stitches. And I'm immediately looking at this quilt over here to see if there's any thread tails on it that I can potentially hold up for y'all. That was a cute face that I made. Aren't you glad you got to see that? Oh, there is a set. If we need it, we have a set of tails I can pull up. All right. Now, here's how we do this. So here's the quilt before I buried the thread tails, and you can see them dangling off that corner. All right. We need those thread tails to be in between the quilt top and the batting. Okay. Big asterisk. Love me a good asterisk. You can just take a few stitches back and forth to secure your quilting. Carry on your merry way and simply trim those tails. That is a-okay. All right. I have seen award-winning quilters do that. All right. I like a little bit of a cleaner finish, in part because some of my quilting plans have a lot of thread breaks. And if I were to do a little back and forth every single time, it would start to become more visible. Right. So I like to use this method for that reason. I also personally feel like it's a little bit more secure. And I like the tidy effect of it. Okay. So in order to do this, you're going to need a hand sewing needle with a large eye and a little piece of thread, or you're just gonna need a self-threading needle, okay? Personally, I go for the hand sewing needle with a large eye. I know lots of folks who go for the self-threading needle, all right? And what you're gonna do is you're gonna take those thread tails from where you started. If you want it extra secure, you're gonna tie a little knot in them where the knot lands right up against your quilt's surface, all right? Then you're gonna take those thread tails and you're gonna thread the needle. You're either gonna thread the eye of the self-threading needle, or you're gonna use your extra piece of thread to make a little loop on your hand sewing needle and then feed the threads through there. Think about if you have braces or bridge work or anything like that, and you have those dental floss loops, right? That you put the dental floss through the loop, and then you can feed the dental floss through what's going on in your mouth in order to floss where you need to floss, right? You're making one of those essentially. You're making an easier thing to thread. So thread tails through that loop, tip of the needle goes into the quilt top right where those thread tails have come out and passes in between the top and the batting or through the batting for an inch or two. All right. If your hand is underneath and you poke yourself with the needle, you went too far. Okay, you want to run this through the quilt sandwich itself, not down to the bottom. All right. Then you're going to rock your needle so you can pull your needle out a couple inches away. And when you pull that through, you're going to pull that little lasso and your thread tails through with it. If you put a little knot, go and tug that knot into the batting. All right. Then you can trim your thread tails and you have this just extra buffer thread that's going to help prevent any of your stitches from coming undone. Does that follow? I know that's hard to explain that way. Let me pull this over to me. I don't know if I have a hand sewing needle handy. We're going to look. Nope, there's not one in there. Let's see. Yes, pressing across the room is an amazing way to improve your ergonomics. Bravo. Here we go. I'm going to pull this down because I'm going to show y'all a little bit. Because I very handily have this here. Okay, so first up, hand sewing needle, right? This is a pretty big needle, right? But that's okay because we're just going to use it to bury these thread tails. And then handy dandy hot pink thread. This is a great use for, you know, bobbins, random bobbin thread, etc. I have even cut long tails off of a quilt only to use those tails as my lasso the next time around. All right, so see, I've threaded that through the needle. There you go. And I'm going to tie a knot here. Just a single knot. Double knotting it makes it a little too bulky. All right. And so now I have this lasso that is remarkably challenging to see. But it's there, I promise. All right. Havana. I don't know who she thinks she hears. All right, over here, I have the thread tails in question. All right, there's two of them. There's a turquoise and a white. And we're going to pass these through like so. So that now, see how they're threaded through. And then I put that needle right into the quilt top. See how you can see the needle under there? If you're like me and you have a needle phobia, that completely grosses you out. All right, and then we tug everything through to this lovely spot a couple inches away. And then we trim right down at the edge, okay? And voila, right? That little corner, so there's still a thread up here. That's a different set of stitching, but that thread is now buried and secured, all right? When is this useful? This is useful at your regular starts and stops, but as I mentioned, this is also useful if you run out of bobbin thread. And I shouldn't say if, I should say when. that is part of the quilting process, that at some point you're going to run out of bobbin thread. All right. And so in order to do this, I usually use my seam ripper, and I pick back until I have a thread tail for both the top and the bobbin. Then I'm going to change my bobbin, and I'm going to start where those thread tails ended and resume my quilting. And then I will go back and I'll bury all 4 threads to make that join invisible. All right. Huzzah. All right. Next up, the advantage of this method is that if you have a quilt like this, and if you're watching this on a big screen, you can see all the quilting that's on this quilt. This quilt had 1 trillion thread breaks. But by the time I buried them all, you can't tell. And it looks like somehow, by some amazing magic, I went top to bottom with a super complicated quilt plan without breaking thread. It is, of course, an illusion, but it's an illusion that makes for a really tidy quilt, and that's really nice. All right. So, any questions about posture or about burying thread tails that I have not answered yet? Because then we're going to talk about managing our mindset, which I think might be my favorite part. I don't know. I love talking about posture too, but this might be my favorite. All right, keep those questions coming if you have them. Let's jump in. I already mentioned your inner mean grump. So Mel, this is a really great question. Let me address this first. She says, sounds like thread breaks are common. So if your tension is properly adjusted, you should not be having random thread breaks when you're quilting, right? If you're having just random thread breaks where like the thread is snapping, that probably means your top tension is too tight. But thread breaks in terms of changing thread color or moving to a different place on the quilt or running out of bobbin, yeah, they're going to happen on every quilt. Yay, Christy, a light bulb moment. I love light bulb moments. Yes. And you're right. It should not poo-poo your day. Excellent, Mel. So we mentioned your inner mean grump. The upside of your inner mean grump is that it keeps you alive. All right. This is literally the part of our brain that says, avoid the hungry tiger, don't touch the hot stove, right? That's its job. The problem is that our brain tends to think that all unfamiliar things are hungry tigers or hot stoves. You want to learn a new skill, it's probably going to kill you. You should quit while you're ahead, right? But we know free motion quilting isn't going to kill you. But if your brain thinks that it is, it can cause a lot of anxiety. And it can be a real roadblock to learning something that you ultimately could fall in love with. It's going to make a big difference in your quilting process, that could save you a lot of money, that could increase your creativity, and could bring you a lot of joy units, right? So how do we deal with that voice in our head? Especially because some of us have a really loud inner mean grump, right? I like to say that I'm really good at speaking on this topic because my inner mean grump is the meanest of them all. And I don't know if that's necessarily true. Comparison games usually don't help anything. But just know that if yours is really loud and really mean, you are far from alone. And that is not going to keep you from making that free motion quilting dream come true. You just have to know how to manage it. All right. There are 3 amazing ways to calm your inner mean grump. The first is information. So having facts to say, no, that's not going to be a problem because I know what to do is an amazing way to calm that inner mean grump. Well, we can't sit down and free motion quilt because we're only like just learning how to do tension, and sometimes our thread still breaks, and like then our whole quilt is going to look like a mess because we have so many thread breaks. It's a lot from your inner mean grump, but it's going to happen, right? And what do? You say, today I learned how to bury those threads, and I'm going to keep practicing adjusting my tension. But in the meanwhile, I know what to do to fix that. Well, but last time we free motion quilted, it really, really hurt, and our neck was sore for 3 days. And you remember how painful that was when we were sitting at Susie's graduation because you were still sore from quilting, and like, we just can't have that. It really affects our life. Well, you're right. Last time that we free motion quilted, we were really sore. But looking back, I realized that I was sitting too low compared to my quilting surface. And now I've learned how to adjust my posture and adjust my quilting setup for that. So I'm not going to be as sore now. I also learned that I should quilt in shorter periods of time and make sure I'm hydrating and stretching my body. So it's going to be better, right? Right, Mel? Doesn't it? Listen, inner mean grumps are not creative. That's the other thing you need to know. Your inner mean grump is not creative. It's very basic. That's why it's so easy for me to be like, yeah. And Susan asks very accurately, we should question that voice in our head. Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it kind? Right? And if it's not those things, we don't need to pay attention to it. All right. The other thing that you can do is you can give yourself a personal pep talk. Remind yourself of all the times you learned to do something new and you succeeded, even if you didn't succeed the first time, right? You learned how to walk, you learned how to talk, you learned how to write, right? I know those sound like kind of silly examples because they're so far in the past, but those are the kinds of motor skills, balance, muscle memory, hand-eye coordination that we're going to be using for free motion quilting. You already mastered the big picture of these skills when you were a kid, right? We're just finessing a new application for them. All right. You can also give yourself a pep talk that's truly quilting related. Well, once upon a time, I didn't know how to get, crisp points on my tri-rex units, or once upon a time, I didn't know how to sew with an accurate 1/4 inch seam, or once upon a time, I didn't know how to sew curves. And I've learned how to do all of those skills. So maybe I can learn this skill too. And just that, hold some reasonable doubt for yourself of maybe I can learn this skill too. When those things fail, that's what our community is for, right? An enormous part of String and Story is our Quilting Rockstar community. And sometimes you just need to be able to go into the community and maybe you post a picture of what you're working on. Maybe you just send up a flare for help and say, my inner mean grump is really loud. Here's what it's saying. Can someone please help? Right? And sometimes you just need a friend to talk you off the edge, right? One of my besties called me a couple of weeks ago, and I can't remember what had happened at work, but she was up here, like she was on the ceiling, and she was like, "I can say all the things to myself, but it's not working. Can you literally say all these same things to me because I think it's going to help?" And I did. Like I didn't tell her anything she didn't know, but sometimes you just need an outside person to talk you off the ceiling and be like, "You are at a 10. Let's see if we can get to a 7. Let's see if we can get to a 5. Can we bring it down to a 3?" And sometimes the way we do that is like, give yourself permission to take a break while you process this encouragement you've been handed, right? We can take breaks, but we also need to have those people around us. And Michelle nailed it. Permission to be a beginner. I might suck at first, but I can get better. Honestly, that is a place where it is safe to be a beginner. It's one of the things that I am most proud of with our Quilting Rockstars is the Quilting Rockstars create a safe place to be a beginner. Learning, right? Uh-oh, did the internet fail? Okay, we're back. So I want to remind you what I told you at the beginning. No matter, you can and will be a free motion quilting rock star. And over the last 45 minutes, hopefully you've gathered 1, 2, 3 or more tips and tricks that you're going to take forward that make you feel more equipped than you felt 30 or 45 minutes ago, right? Some of y'all have called those things out in the chat, and that makes me so excited. It's glitchy. Okay, the replay should be clean. I know my internet connection is a little iffy. I am so sorry. All right. So, in spite of the glitchiness, we do real life around here. The first masterclass last week got my kids running in to say goodnight. It is what it is. So, let's go back to that free motion quilting dream. We talked about feathers and pebbles. We talked about just getting started. We talked about being able to get more even stitches, right? Full moon gremlin's cranking up. It might be. Also, I just love the word gremlin. That's really great. That's an excellent, excellent word choice. I love it. Those dreams can come true. And we've moved the needle today. In fact, you've already done the hardest part of making the dream come true. Did you know that? You didn't even realize that you've done the hardest part of making the dream come true. Why? Because you acknowledged that you have that dream and you took a step towards making it come true by showing up and starting is the hardest part. You have raised your hand and said, I would like to be a beginner, please. And I'd like to figure this out until I'm no longer a beginner and I'm a confident FMQ rock star. So how do we continue that journey? How do we maintain the momentum that you've started today? And there are two options, right? The first is you can Google and you can find things on YouTube, and there are a lot of things on YouTube. The challenge is that it also is a little bit of a like a mine that you can get lost in. And sometimes it is hard to then get back out of that and actually get to the quilting part, right? So my invitation to you, the second option, is that you can join me as I show you on a proven and curated path taken by more than 1,000 rock stars before you. That is not an exaggeration. I think there's actually over 2,000 rock stars in FMQA now, to make that FMQ dream come true. And so I would love to invite you to Free Motion Quilting Academy. This is my tried and true digital course. This is our 12th cohort of this class. So a whole lot of folks have gone through and been part of this community before you and seen success inside this class. And I would love for you to be part of this next group. So Free Motion Quilting Academy is a proven method. Inside the academy, we build on the lessons from today's masterclass with 12 weeks of step-by-step video lessons designed to help you grow from a nervous beginner to a confident intermediate free motion quilting rock star, and to get that dream to be a reality, right? Every dream y'all listed can be a reality long before the end of this course. How's that for exciting, right? So let me introduce you to a few rock stars who just graduated from FMQA. This was part of our group that graduated on Saturday. And Maureen says, I loved everything about Free Motion Quilting Academy. At 69, I was a little doubtful that I could learn how to free motion quilt. But when I found Holly Ann's intro to FMQ, I decided I had to try. Holly Ann's teaching style and videos are fantastic. And although the course is 12 weeks long, so Maureen took intro and then moved into FMQA. That is not a prerequisite, by the way. That's just how Maureen chose to do it. Although the course is 12 weeks long, there's no pressure to finish within that time period. Like life sometimes gets in the way, and it's so very nice to have one less pressure. Remember, we quilt for joy units, right? So this is a course that's about you having a fabulous time, not about you feeling under pressure with a clock. I love being able to go back to the course over and over again for a refresher of any of the motifs. Another wonderful part of this course is being able to post questions and be in contact with others taking the class. There's so much encouragement within the group. Holly Ann, thank you for a fantastic course. I hope one day I can pop into your shop and meet you in person. I would love that. This will go down as one of the very best Christmas gifts my 6 children have ever given me. How cool is that? Also, I asked Maureen about the cabin that this in her whole cloth quilt here. So at the end of FMQA, you make 2 projects. One is a sampler, like the one behind me, where each square has a different free motion quilting motif in it. The other is a creative assignment where you basically paint a picture with your free motion skills on a whole cloth piece of fabric. And I asked Maureen, I said, Maureen, tell me about this cabin. And she said, when I was raising my 6 kids, the house would get really loud. And so this was the cabin I would imagine in my mind, and imagine how nice it would be to run away and live with a little peace and quiet. And I laughed so hard because I was relieved to know I'm not the only mom who does that. So let me tell you about Free Motion Quilting Academy. Free Motion Quilting Academy is an enormous value at an accessible price point, right? Full tuition on Free Motion Quilting Academy is $327 US, or 3 payments of $112. To put that in context, that is 2 to 3 quilts out to the long armor, right? So the value on this course stacks up quickly. You do not have to make a lot of quilts or even work through all 30 motifs in order to gain a lot of value from the class. The class includes 6 professionally recorded video units teaching you all the ins and outs of free motion quilting, from supply gathering to setup to how to stitch over 2 dozen motifs. Again, pictured behind me. I feel like one of those silly like reels. Anyway, a bonus unit about what to quilt where and how to make quilting plans so that you can make those decisions before you start stitching on your precious quilt. A 50+ page course workbook that is chock full of resources. Access to our exclusive online community where not only will you connect with rock stars around the world who are part of the course, including from the previous 11 cohorts, but also be able to connect with me. And that's where I will do live video Q&A sessions to make sure that you never feel stuck. And then you have lifetime access to all of the above. So that's what Maureen was talking about when she said, I love not feeling the pressure to finish in a certain period of time. We create structure to the course, but if you've got life going on, you move at your own pace, right? Stacey says, it's been a couple of years for me and I haven't completed the course, but I have learned so much. Stacey, I love that. And Stacey's story is really common. There are a lot of free motion quilting rock stars who have enrolled in the course, and they've taken what they need from it. Maybe you don't go all the way through all the motifs right away to graduation, but you pick up a few that you really like. And honestly, you might get busy finishing quilts. And I hear that story often from folks who are in the class. Susan says, I am part of the January 2021 cohort, and I still haven't graduated, but I have completed so many quilts. Susan, thank you for immediately backing me up on that. That was amazing. This was not planned, folks. And I can vouch for how many quilts Susan has finished because I get to see a lot of them, and they're amazing. Though one of these days you're going to graduate, and I'm going to get to cause hoopla and ruckus, Susan. So let's take a peek inside the unit. So unit 0 is all about introduction and orientation, a little bit more about me, about the course, about how it works, making sure that you have your bearings before we get started. And then we head into our foundational skills and first motifs. We talk a little bit more about your quilting setup, about your posture, and learn some basic motifs like the meander, loopy meander, swirls, and switchbacks. If you purchase this course and just learn those 4 motifs, you can quilt a whole lot of quilts. All right. Units 2 through 6 continue to add motifs to your toolbox. And our bonus unit is, of course, making about a quilting plan. And that's deciding what to quilt where. Inside this course, we don't do ruler work. That is separate. That's in Ruler Quilting Academy. I recommend taking both classes if you're interested in both topics, just for what that's worth. And this class is for folks on all machines. It is it's quilted. Lord have mercy. It's filmed on the Juki J150 that you saw a few photos back, which is an industrial machine. As you can see now, one of my machines is a Burnett B77. I also have a Bernina 590, and I have a Handy Quilter Moxie. So even though the class is filmed sitting down, I have so many students that have completed it successfully on the long arm. And because I also quilt on the long arm, I'm equipped to answer questions about that process. Susan said, my Astro Quilt and I were on timeout from each other for a whole year. Thanks to my summer set list, I pulled it out of the box and then in the process of completing 6 out of 12 blocks. Susan, I love that. I love progress. Momentum is everything. How does the online community work? Our units are hosted inside of a platform called Kajabi. You can think of this like our classroom, and you can go there over and over again as often and as much as you want in order to watch the videos. We also inside Kajabi have what's called a Kajabi community. And think about a little bit like a message board. You can post words and pictures and connect with one another in there. And the whole goal for that is to make sure you never feel alone on this journey. A story I've heard entirely too many times is I went to the quilt show, I took the free motion quilting class, it went okay there. When I got home, something went wrong, but I was all by myself and I didn't know how to fix it. Or I got home and something went wrong and I just gave up because I was discouraged, right? This community exists so you have access to me and your fellow rock stars so that you're never stuck. We can help you troubleshoot and we can encourage you when that IMG gets really loud. All right. Our live Q&A sessions throughout the course are on Wednesdays at 11 a.m. Eastern, but we always collect questions ahead of time in case you can't join us live, and there's always a replay. So let's say you're at work on Wednesdays at 11 a.m. Eastern. You can ask that question ahead of time. I will answer it during the session. Next time you're ready to sit down and watch the video, you'll have your answer. All right. So we do that in order to make this as accommodating as possible for all schedules and all time zones. I should drop a link down in the chat. I'm busy just like chatting my head off about how excited I am about the course, and I haven't handed y'all a link. So give me just a second and then I will keep going. I do this a brilliant times and I always still do something clumsy. There's the link in case you're going, this sounds great. How do I get it? Also, lifetime access. That means that you have access to these videos and any future updates to the course and access to the community and the ability to tune into future cohorts live Q&As, all without paying extra. Once you are in, you are in. We do not vote people off the island around here. You are welcome and you stay. All right. So let's meet a couple more grads. This is Gail, who also just graduated. Gail said, I'm so happy to graduate. I've taken almost a year to finish, and that's okay. I was in the fall 2022 cohort, so a year ago, and the lifetime access was one of the big benefits to me as I knew I wouldn't have time in my schedule to finish in 12 weeks. The videos are wonderful since I can go back to them at any time, and we'll see the latest version of the videos with any updates. I realized after I had the sampler on my long arm that I'd never watched the feathers videos. So I pulled them up, practiced on my whiteboard, and jumped in. Now I love doing feathers. Holly-Ann's, you can do this encouragement and cheerleading. Help me figure out what to do for my whole cloth, as well as get my sampler put together on the long arm and finished. Again, the center part of this quilt that you're looking at, all of those colors are the thread because it's a whole cloth quilt, which is just incredible. So Free Motion Quilting Academy allows you to learn free motion quilting from the privacy and comfort of your own home. It encourages you to start with what you have, keeping supplies minimal and affordable rather than urging you to buy a fancier machine. And I always say it, if you need a permission slip to buy a fancier machine, I will write you one. But 99% of the time, the machine you already have at home is perfectly capable of being your first machine for free motion quilting. Free Motion Quilting Academy is ready when you are, regardless of geography or time zone or schedule, with on-demand pre-recorded video lessons. By the way, in those video lessons as well, not only are they professionally recorded, which means they're super high quality, well lit, awesome angles, etc. I'm working on this quilt. So where you see the meander and loopy meander in this block, that's what I was quilting when I teach you in the course. And I think that's valuable because, as you can see, this is a proper quilt. This is a 50 by 60 inch quilt, give or take, right? So you also get the benefit of seeing, how do I handle a real quilt on a domestic machine, not just a dinky little practice sandwich. Listen, I love practice sandwiches. I encourage you to use them, but there's a time and a place where we've got to make a position. We go ahead and lay the groundwork for that in the course videos. Free Motion Quilting Academy offers you ongoing access to the instructor. Hello. So you never feel alone or stuck, and so you can get near real-time help answering your live streamed your Q&A questions during the live streams. Well, that was clumsy. Free Motion Quilting Academy also connects you to other rock stars in training around the world so that you can help and encourage each other. Y'all have had an amazing example of that today with some of these rock stars who have been in the chat. This is the vibe we're here for, right? All right, a few more rock stars. This is Sandra. She said, I loved Hack's enthusiastic support and teaching style, the supportive environment that is cultivated, and the permission to not be perfect. Pat adds, I really liked the carefully structured lessons in Kajabi, which allowed me to progress at my own pace and to review lessons when needed. Holly-Ann does a great job of her descriptions and demos, and I really appreciated the focus on progress rather than perfection. My inner mean grump needed to be put in its place while working through some of the blocks, since I am a relative newcomer to long arming as well as free motion quilting. The quilting journey continues. And Joanna says, I love the self-directed nature of the videos and how Holly-Ann shows what she's doing up close on an actual quilt. I also love how she lets mistakes be what they are. She didn't try to present an illusion of perfection, which let me give myself some grace when I made mistakes. So rock stars, if you have enjoyed our hour together today, if you have taken something actionable from our time to apply to your free motion quilting journey, and if you're excited and eager to make that free motion quilting dream come true, I invite you to Free Motion Quilting Academy. Enrollment is only open through Saturday. So enrollment is closing soon. And I cannot make promises about when it's been back. I know it will be at least several months. Probably a little bit longer. The official calendar date is still a year out. So I want to just encourage you, especially because of lifetime access, jump in, get started, take what you can now. If you need to be like Gail or any of our other rock stars who've taken longer to do the course, that's what it's designed for. This is designed to be a course that is fun and encouraging and effective. And creating an additional stressor in your life is not going to do that. So it's not what we're about. So Rockstars, I'm going to drop the link one more time. If you are thrilled with what you took away today, I would love for you to jump in with us. Lori says, is there a summer session? I don't have an answer on that right now, Lori. I know that scheduling can be difficult, but just like I mentioned, we jump straight into those foundational motifs. And even if that's all you do for right now, being able to finish some quilts with that until your schedule frees up some more. I'm guessing based on your question, you're probably a teacher. Just know there's always folks in the group. There's always folks working through the course. So you're not going to be alone, no matter when you pick it up and put it down, when you work on it, when you don't. All right. There was something else I was going to say. Oh, I know that a few of you who are in the chat have already jumped in with us for this cohort. If you are still here, if you'll give a holler, I would love that. Mel, I think you're one of those. I saw a few names that looked familiar. So give a hoop and a holler in the chat. I'm going to take one more swig of coffee. And if you've got any last minute questions, go ahead and drop them in. because I would love to get them answered for you before we wrap up our time together. Bless y'all's ears. I talk a mile a minute, and I know that I talk a mile a minute, and I have never once been successful at doing anything else. Garnet says total knee replacement in a few weeks. I can play catch up later on the course. Great option. Yes, Garnet, that's exactly it. And let me tell you, you would not be the first rock star to incorporate free motion quilting as part of a PT plan. That's been really interesting. We've had a number of folks that everything from having gone through cancer treatment and just needing to build up chest and back muscles again, as well as just building up confidence and joy units, to dealing with brain injuries and needing to rebuild hand-eye coordination, to having joint replacements and needing to just practice sitting up, moving, all of those things. I'm by no means a medical professional, and I cannot officially recommend that, but I can say that you would not be the first person to derive benefit and excitement from being able to do this as part of your recovery. Lori, yes, I am on Main Street. It's literally String and Story on Main. We are open Thursdays and Fridays 12 to 4 and Saturdays 12 to 3. And I would love to meet you too. And if you jump in, you could come get your kit in person, which would be very cool. The kit is optional. You'll get an email about that if you sign up, but we put together an easy kit to make putting the sampler together a little bit more straightforward. Oh, Corinne has asked a vital question. Do most people who take the academy not graduate in 12 weeks? Correct. I would say most people take 2 cohorts to graduate. So they take 24 to 30 weeks on average. So it is the smaller percentage of people who barrel straight through from enrollment to graduation in one fell swoop. Yeah, that's why I love to basically harp on that lifetime access and the fact that you are not alone if that's how you're making the schedule work for you. I know some people, I'll say it slower, Lori, hang on. I know some people like the structure of the schedule, and that's why we offer it. But yeah, we know that flexibility is needed too. Lori, let me type it in here. Okay, so we are String and Story on Main. 3150 Main Street, Suite 101. We're right at the end of the building if you're coming down Main Street. And we are open Thursday and Friday, 12 to 4, and Saturday, 12 to 3. Ooh, if I could type, hang on, 2, 3 p.m. Yep. Jane says December 22nd from December 22. Yes, oh my gosh, I love that, Jane. Yeah, graduate with this group. You'd be right on schedule, 2 cohorts. I love it. Rockstars, thank you so much for your time. We are right at the top of the hour. Lori, I hope that I get to meet you in person soon. The rest of y'all, feel free to plan the trip. We would love to see you here in Duluth. It is a fun place, but more in the short term and perhaps more accessible. I would love to see you in Free Motion Quilting Academy. Thank you so much for joining me. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. And I can't wait to shout your names during our welcome party on Saturday. Have a great day, y'all.